Dear seafood lovers, this is one special video for you on how to work with your seafood, frying or baking, which you can enjoy with your kinky, your gari, your eba, everything, your rice, bibia, ebekoso. So I'm going to be working on the fried and then the baked, just in case you're trying to avoid the oils from frying. You can just bake it up and make it more healthy. So let's dig into this sumptuous seafood recipe, which is perfect for the gakomi, which is perfect for the fancy dokuno, which is perfect for the eba. So you need some spices in there. When it comes to seafood, you need to be careful how you spice it. If you don't spice it well, it can be a bit yin. So what I do with the spice is that I have a mixed spice here. The green you see a bit is a mixed spice, and it's basically from fennel seed, coriander, a bit of black pepper, a bit of white pepper. There's a bit of bay leaves in there, and yes, that's what I usually blend for my stews, soups, and co. So I have that one, and by the side is the estro. Yes. I'd have them in the description button below, so don't worry. And I have some ginger powder because I was not going to use fresh ginger. And of course, I've got some selim. Yes, Rentia, which I've also blended and crushed a little bit. And I've got the red amber, which is the calabash nutmeg, which helps reduce the yin feeling in your seafood. And of course, I'm going to continue with some pepper, onion, and garlic. So my garlic is looking a bit brown because I dried them up, but I didn't blanch it before I dried. But I would look at all of those in my spices video. So no worries, no chill. Yes. So this is basically the seasoning you need for your seafood, both for the fried and then for the baked. And I'm going to also use a bit of bell pepper and onion in the baked one as well, just to beautify and also add more flavor. So I blended all of the spices up, like the onion and everything all together, and I added in some salt as well. Just in case it's not too hot for you, you can add in the dried pepper, which you can just meal up. So I always have a bit of the miswa or the chili, the local ones we use for shito. Yes. So I start with the cuttlefish, what we like to call around here octopus. Yes, these ones going into the glass bowl. I'm going to bake it. This is a pirate bowl. Now you can bake in your baking pan or your whatever I used to bake. But whenever I want to bake with glass is the safest, glass is the best. But I need to be careful with the handling so you don't crack it. And there's not every glass you can bake with. If it's a good Pyrex bowl, you can bake with it, and you can always check when you're buying to be sure. Now, thank you to my girls, Dede and Akusia, for those beautiful Pyrex sets. Yes. So yes, I'm just going to be seasoning it. And I have the sea snails I added to it, which I'm also going to pour the spice over. The more the spicier, the merrier. But that doesn't mean the spices should be overly punching. If it's too much, it's going to be some way where you're eating it. And I have the shrimp. When you're going to bake with the shrimp, especially in this one pot kind of big style, it's always good you unskin the shrimp. And I've done that in my shrimp videos here. You can check my grilled shrimp and broccolini recipe here, where I thought how to handle shrimps, all on this channel. And I'm going to put this aside, and I'm going to prep the other ones as well. So as I'm baking, then I'm fine. So this is the rest of the cuttlefish. You can start to remove the skin with some hot water before you proceed. But sometimes I'm giving you the street style kind of cuttlefish fry. They are all edible, but when you move the skin, sometimes it becomes more presentable. But this is one way to go about it. And I've taught this on my channel where I seasoned it before I fried, because when you season and fry, you get more taste in there. But just in case you want to season and want to fry directly, like it's done on the street, this is one way to go about it. And by spicing and setting it down for a while, it adds more taste and flavor than what is sold on the street. And this is more healthier than what is sold on the street. And this is your sea snails. Just in case you've not worked with sea snails before, these are the smaller sea snails. They can be very, very large, like as big as my head. Yeah, some of them are very big. And sometimes they just crash it and then they cut it into smaller chunks and they sell over here. And for the shrimps, yes, you can check out my shrimp recipe, like I said earlier, on how to unskin and dress your shrimp. If you don't want the shell on, you can just check it to see how to go about it. But I was giving you a freestyle on the street one, how it's done on the street, but with a bit of twist in there. So I'm going to spice all my seafood, and I'm just going to let it sit before I fry. That's one way to get more flavor and more taste out of it than what you get on the street. Then it goes into my bowl. So I'm going to go on to work on my mpatwa. Mpatwa is baby tilapias. Yes, and this has been dressed. The inner parts, the belly with the poo and all those ones have been taken away. If you don't take it, it's going to be better when you eat the mid part. That's why there's a cut in the middle. Then I add the pepper sauce I've done around it, the spice sauce around it. And I put that also aside. I just keep them in the fridge. So when I want to work on it in the morning, I tend to do that in the evening before I sleep. Then when I wake up, I just fry and go my way. So I bake this in my dadase, as always. Yes. So I just place the rack in. Then my Pyrex goes in there. And of course, I'm just going to do this. You have to preheat it at saying a bit. So you can preheat it for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes on high heat. And then when you're done, you can put it in there. You can close it up. And then you can leave it over low constant heat till it's done. So that's how it works. And I'm going to show you how it looks when it's done. And for the rest of the seafood, I'm going to be frying over here. So like the octopus, I'm just going to put it in the oil and I'm going to allow it to fry. I covered it up because I didn't want it to, like do pop, 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 pop. And the oil will be splashing all over me. But one thing is, when you don't steam your octopus before you fry, it doesn't really spill a lot of oil like when you steam before you fry. That's what scares people from frying octopus. But the cool thing is, if you want to save your skin, this is one way to go about it. The only thing is, when you taste the taste from the seasoned and fried, when you like cook it, it's different from when you just fry it directly. So personally, I prefer to boil it up a bit before I fry. But sometimes I just do the street style, especially for the kinky parties and all those ones. Yes. So this one I have all the parts in there which I'm frying. And as you're frying, you're going to have a bit of, should I say, how will I call this? So you're going to have a bit of, should I say dirt? No, I don't want to say dirt. The foamy part around it is going to come up. You can just scoop it with your perforated ladle as you're working with it and to just check it up. I use coconut oil to fry this. So coconut oil, once impurities go in, it foams a lot. That's why I've seen it like this. Your oil may not foam this much if you're using vegetable oil or soybean oil or sunflower oil. So don't be too worried if it's not foaming. If it's foaming too, don't worry, because the scientists will tell you because impurities have gone into the oil, that's why it's foaming up like that. So once it's brown, golden brown, I'm just going to take them out of the fire. And please don't fry this over very high heat with the hope of finishing very early. You may get the inside a bit raw. And one thing about seafood is if it's not well cooked, it can peg you seriously. If your seafood is not well cooked, you can eat and run, like serious running. So please just be careful and cook it properly and enjoy it properly. So I placed in the sea snails and I'm going to fry that as well. Now the sea snail, because of the slimy part around it, as you're frying, sometimes it pushes off a lot of impurities into the oil. But the good thing is once it's cooking, you can just use your strainer to just pick up most of the dirt off it, which helps you a lot. Unfortunately, I didn't capture one part when it comes to working with your sea snail. But then with the fresh sea snail, when you cut it into two, there's a bit of a yellow something at the top there. You can just use your hand to just remove it as you're washing it, and that reduces the slimy nature of it. So when you fry it, you don't feel that slimy stuff with it. So you can fry this till it's golden brown, and you'd realize that as you're frying, it's going to shrink in size. That's how your sea snails are. So as you're frying and the snails are getting cooked, they are just going to shrink in size. Don't be disturbed, don't be worried. And like I said, your oil may foam up, especially when you're using coconut oil to fry these kind of stuff. So that also goes into my strainer basket. And then I go on to fry my shrimps. Yes. And shrimps, no matter what you do, you're still going to have a bit of liquid at the base, which you can just discard. And then you fry that beautifully as well. So you really don't need to cover this up. It's not going to spill all over the place, but you'd have to be stirring it. And with shrimps, you need constant heat. If your heat misbehaves, the shrimp is going to end up absorbing a lot of oil. So you need to be very careful with it. So at this moment, I'm just going to check for my seafood. I'm going to just flip the other side or turn for every part of it to equally enjoy the spice before it dries out. And you can see the shrimp is already coiled up. It's actually ready to be eaten. But then the octopus takes a bit of time, and then the sea snails, just not to get it hard. So that goes in. And around this point, I'm just going to add in the bell pepper and the onion, which is also going to add more flavor, more kick, more aromatics to it, and also give you a beautiful look when you're done. And I'm just going to cover it up. So once that is still ongoing, I'm just going to finish up frying the shrimps, which is not much of work. The only thing is when you're doing shrimp, you should know that it's going to foam up a bit, especially when the oil is coconut oil. And then it's going to leave a bit of a mess around the pot, the size of your pan. But you can always scoop that out. And the beautiful thing about shrimp is that it makes your oil smell nice afterwards. So if you use it later, it smells good. The only thing is that it can absorb a lot of the oil, so you need to let it strain a lot. So those who sell large amounts of shrimps, what they tend to do sometimes is that they put it in the sun, so the sun would heat it up and then drain most of the oil out and get it dried. So if your oil has to be constant for you to get it like that. And see how beautiful my baked seafood is also going. So once I'm done with that, I'm just going to finish off by frying my fish, my mpatwa, my baby tilapias. And that's also a delicacy around here. When you find this kind of stuff, deep frying always works, because if you do a shallow fry, if you don't take care, it's gonna tear. So you need to be careful with it. And another thing you need to be very careful with is that once you're done with all those fries we've done, you can't say you're going to reuse the oil. Once you're done, the oil has to go away. In the typical Ghanaian society, sometimes there are those who cook food outside. Charlie, the oil they don't throw away. If you realize it's just another reuse. You denature the oil when you overly reuse it, especially when it's not a good oil. So even for good oils like coconut oil, which has a bit of resistance to heat, you don't need to overly use your oil. Yes, so one best way to go about it is to use the right amount of oil. So you don't have to feel bad or feel should I say, the monetary aspect when you're throwing it away or discarding it. So use the right quantity of oil when you're cooking so it becomes easy to discard it after using. So you don't overly reuse your oil. So that's one thing I'd like you to take note of. And I know sometimes people feel once I'm using olive oil, once I'm using this oil. It's not about the brand. It's not about that. It's basically about each oil and the temperatures they work with. It's about overly using your oil. It's about the heat and all the things your oil is going into. If you don't take care, you're going to be using poisonous oil to cook. So be very careful with that. So once this is done, Charlie, I place mine in my sinker. And this one, the kinky party is all ready to go on. So you can see my shrimp, you can see the cuttlefish, you can see the sea snail, and you can see the mpatwa. Everything all set, all ready for action. And it's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And of course, the big ones are also ready for action. And yeah, we enjoyed it with some kinky, some pepper sauce. Yes, when you're done, you can just sprinkle some hot pepper sauce over it and enjoy it. With some kinky alongside some small pear somewhere, some beko and some shito and everything, some food to fry. So do well to support us, to urge us on with a subscription, with your likes, with your comments, and by sharing this video to others. So we'll see you in the next food video. Do live life to the fullest. Be joyous, be merry. Lots of love for my team and I. Mwah.